Now that we have our UI elements set up for a conversation to take place between our playable character and the NPCs, we need to go ahead and set up the particular elements for that conversation. So we want each NPC to be asking a different question. So if we look in here, we have 5 different non-playable characters, and we want each one of them to say something different to our character. So, but we only have one speech bubble. So we need to know which character our player is currently interacting with. So to do that, first thing we need is reference to the current character. So I'm going to come over here to variables and set up a new variable and call that current NPC. This will be of type game object again, so it's just a reference to one of our game objects. And I'm going to put a default value in there. I'll just pick a random one. I'll just throw the dragon in there for a default value. We will be changing that regularly as the game goes. So where do we want to change that? Well, as our character walks around, when a collision occurs with one of the NPCs, that's where the conversation bubble pops up. So that's where we need to adjust the current NPC. And we set that up on the control script for the player here in the collision. So I will drag over a reference to this variable. But whenever this collision occurs, I want to change what's in that variable. So if we just drag it over, it brings in something to get the value of the variable. If we hold down the Alt key, so Alt, and then click and drag it over, we get a unit to set that value of that variable. So if we make this big enough to see everything here, well, we want that to happen when the collision occurs. So we'll toggle on and off the speech bubble, and then we'll change the value of which character we're interacting with. And what are we going to change it to? Well, we want to change it to whatever that collision occurred with. And that was this over here. So our collision unit applies to the self, the player that we're moving around. And it collided with something, so we exposed all the stuff we know about a collision. One of those being another game object. What game object did we collide with? And that's what we want to set as the current NPC. And that way we'll know which question to display in that dialog box. So now that we'll be able to tell which character our player is interacting with, we need the dialog they're going to throw up. So here I have copied some questions and answers from several quizzes in a recent class I taught. So I'm going to, how many do I have? 1, 2. So it looks like I have at least 5 fill in the blank or single answer questions. So I'm going to bring those in and set that for the character to talk about. So I'm going to select this, then Control C to copy that question. And I'm going to store that in a variable over here. So I'll go to a scene variable and create a new variable. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6 different characters. So I'm going to set up a variable for each one. Well, really 2 variables for each one. The first variable, I'll just start there at the bottom and have the dragon question. That's going to be a string, and the value of that string is the thing I just copied from the list. What I just copied. Data sent by a program to the screen, a printer or a file is called blank. So we also need the answer to that. So I'll also make a variable called dragon answer. And set that again as a string. And the answer to that question will be output. Data sent by a program to screen, printer, or a file is called output. So I'm going to do that for each one of these characters. There's no need to watch me do that repeatedly, but a dragon question, a dragon answer. So I'll come through and set up a troll question and a troll answer variable, a princess question and a princess answer variable. And for all of our NPCs, I'm going to set up a question string and an answer string stored as a variable. And that would just eat up time in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while I do that. But it will be exactly the same as those first two. Okay, so while the video was paused, I took each one of these questions and answers that I'd copied and set up beforehand and put them into variables. So like we did for the dragon question and dragon answer, there's strings for each NPC. So princess question, princess answer, dark wizard question, dark wizard answer, and now all of our NPCs have been assigned a question and an answer. So we're ready to switch out the words that show on that speech bubble with each interaction. So to keep track of that, the easiest way to organize it is probably to put it in a script controlling each NPC. That way, each one of the characters controls its own dialogue. So we'll set up a script, and then once we get the first one, we should be able to copy and paste to create the rest really quick. So a new flow macro, and I'll just start with, I think the princess NPC was the closest one, so that's the easiest one to test. So I'll type in princess control, then link that to the princess character, same way we've seen before. So we'll add a flow machine component and then drag that new macro over to fill in that spot. Now, when do we want this to happen? It's been stated in earlier tutorials, we always have two events we need to worry about every time we make a macro. We need the start, the initialization, the thing that happens once whenever we first run the game. And we also have the update event, the thing that happens over and over again at every frame of the game. So, well, we're going to change the dialogue to these strings whenever that interaction occurs. So we don't want it to happen only once at the beginning of the game. So we'll do that on the update event. And after we create one, we should be able to copy and paste the rest. So on every frame of the game, we have to make a decision. We have to choose if we want to change that dialogue or not. So we need a selection structure. In a unit, in Bolt, our selection structures are under control and we call them branches. So one of two things can happen. You notice the flow here. We have one flow coming in and then two flows going out. And we'll check some logical condition to see if it's true or false. And if it's true, we'll take this branch out of the flow. And if it's false, we'll take this branch out of the flow. So what are we going to check? Well, there's two things we need to know. We need to know if the speech bubble is showing, and we need to know if the current NPC is the one we're looking at. So we have to check both conditions. So we have references stored in variables. So over here we have a reference to whatever NPC we are currently interacting with. And we want to know if that is active or not. So we can look for get self, and that will tell us whether this speech bubble is currently showing or not. But along with that, we also need to know, whoops, that's not the one I wanted. The current NPC, we know that's active. What we want to know if it's active or not is we want to know if the conversation, the speech bubble, is active. We want to know if the speech bubble is active, and we want to know if the current NPC is the same as the object we're on, in this case, the princess object. So if we drag that out, we can check with logic and have and, or, and different conditions, greater or less than, or in this case, equal to. So is our current NPC equal to, and if we drag out what we're comparing it to, we can just type in self. There is a unit that we can just directly refer to the thing we're looking at. But the word self shows up, so it takes a long time to search for it. But there is a unit that refers to the thing this script or graph is connected to. So we're going to check and see if the current NPC is equal to the self, the NPC we're on, and the speech bubble or the conversation is active. We want to know if both of those are true. So if we come over here to our condition in the branch unit and drag that out, we have these options for our Boolean algebra operations, the logical operations, the and, or, XOR, and not. Well, we want both of those to be true, which means we need and. We need the inclusive condition. So if the speech bubble is showing and the current NPC is the princess in this case, which we just referred to as the self, that'll make it easier to copy and paste this. Then we want to change what is showing on the speech bubble so that if both of those are true, we're going to change the text. So we can look for set text. And we want a text unit and the set text of a text. We want to set the text of what's showing on that speech bubble. So this one right here. Which once again means we're going to need a reference to this game object. I'm going to rename it something more useful. So if we right click on it and go to rename, I'm going to call that question. And we'll probably have to do the same thing for our input field. So I'll go ahead and rename that answer while I'm up here. So we have our question and answer, and we need a reference to that. So we'll save a variable, which we can call question, because it looks the same to us, but call this one question and this one question, but they are different things. The computer will never get them confused. So giving them the same name can be helpful for us when putting things together. So this question variable refers to a game object. In particular, it refers to the game object question. Then we can bring that over here. And that's the thing we want to change the text of. So not the self, we want to change the text of this question element in the game. And what do we want to change it to? Well, we want to change it to the question the princess is asking. So over here in these variables, there's already set up the princess question. So we drag that over. And that's what will become the new value of that text. So let's give that a run and see if that works. So if we hit run, and we put a default value in that speech bubble, so it should just, if we go over and interact with the princess, it should just bring up her question. And with the game running here, we bring our character over here, get close to the princess, and the blank operator returns the remainder after dividing one number by another. Well, that's definitely not our default text, so that looks like it put the right text in the speech bubble. So all we need to do is do this same thing for all of our other characters. And if we look at this script here, well, that's something else, that's something else. This one refers to whatever the script is in. That's something else. This is the only spot that refers to the princess question. So we should be able to copy and paste this whole thing and just paste it in each of the other NPCs and change which question's being asked. So Control C to copy. Then I'll create a new script, create bolt, a flow macro. I'll call it Dragon Control. Link that to our Dragon game object. Control V to paste this in, and the only reference to the princess from where we copied this from was right here. So we can change this to be the dragon question instead. So if we do a quick run to check that now. So with the game running, we come over here and have some sort of interaction. Uh-oh, my keyboard's doing the weird thing again. So we get the princess's question. Then over here, I don't know why my keys are sticking. We get a different question. So it seems to be working. So now we just need to copy and paste that onto each one of the NPCs and change what the variable is. And there's no need to watch that in the video, so I'll go ahead and finish up this tutorial. It's kind of running long, and then I'll do that with this paused, and then the next tutorial we will look about checking if the user inputs the correct answer to that question.